Hi guys, Ricky Pope here, and today on the Christian Nerd Unite podcast, I'm joined by Cam Ray of Cam Ray Semi Productions as we talk about comedy and our thoughts on The Mandalorian Season 3. Plus, scripture and nerdy news as always, and we'll get to all of that right after this. Thanks so much for joining me today. Let's start with some scripture. We're going to read Luke 10, 1 through 9. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. He told them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go, I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. Don't take a purse or a bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. When you enter a house, first say, 'Peace to this house.' If someone who promotes peace is there, your peace will rest on them. If not, it will return to you. Stay there, eating and drinking whatever they give you, for the worker deserves his wages. Do not move around from house to house. When you enter a town and are welcomed, eat what is offered to you. Heal the sick who are there and tell them the kingdom of God has come near to you." I've been thinking a lot about this passage lately. Jesus sent out his followers in pairs to towns that he was going to be going to. He didn't send them out alone. And I'm a firm believer we shouldn't go out alone either. I work with a lot of disciple makers and disciple making movements that use this very passage as a major portion of their process. These groups are reaching people around the world with the gospel here in the U.S. and in very hard access countries. If you've ever wanted to share the gospel with others but never really felt equipped, I'd encourage you to investigate the term disciple making movements and Discovery Bible Study. A couple of good books on it are Contagious Disciple Making, and I've had Paul Watson on the show previously to talk about contagious disciple making, and Miraculous Movements. And if you want to know even more, feel free to contact me at christiannerdsunite.com or on Facebook, and I can give you some more direction. Before we get into our interview, I have some nerdy news for you. The current contract of the Writers Guild of America is set to end on May 1st, and as of this recording, the entertainment industry is gearing up for a possible large-scale dispute and the first strike in over a decade. Much of the dispute seems to be around the residuals from streaming services. Well, in the event of a strike, numerous TV series would be forced to cease production due to the unavailability of writers for new episodes. Although films with completed scripts can proceed with filming, they may lack writers to enhance the dialogue or fix plot holes as they come up. As a response to the potential disruption, studios and production companies have been accumulating projects in recent months. Despite this, certain segments of the industry may remain relatively unaffected. The WGA's efforts to involve reality television and animation writers has seen limited success, which means these type of shows might still be produced. However, this won't be sufficient to keep the industry thriving during a time when continued revenue generation is crucial. John Bernthal will be reprising his role as Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, in the upcoming Daredevil Born Again series on Disney+. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio will be reprising their roles as Daredevil and the Kingpin as well in the planned 18-episode epic. Deborah Ann Wall and Eldon Henson, who played Classic supporting characters Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, respectively, are not currently expected to return at this point. There is plenty of room for characters to have a place with this series being so long, and it is possible they could have cameos at some point, and I do hope they do get to return. Cox and D'Onofrio are also expected to be key figures in the upcoming Echo series, and many say Echo will be setting the stage for Born Again. We'll have to wait and see how all that plays out. Now, let's get right into our interview. Cam, it is great to have you on the Christian Nerds Unite podcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I know we've been chatting back and forth for a while now, and finally connected to get you on the show. Tell us a little bit about who Cam Ray is.
I play an idiot online, but I'm not one in real life. I will say that. Well, yeah, I won't give you a list of names to ask that information from, but no, I love music. I'm a musician. That's kind of my, I love playing music, performing. I teach music. That's kind of what I've always done vocationally, and for fun. I've also always enjoyed acting and performing. I actually started playing piano in church when I was 12, and I've done that ever since. So always been active in church music as well as other kinds of music, and got involved in jazz and all of that later on in high school, and went on to get a degree in that, which, that's what people use all the time for any other careers besides being a jazz player. But anyway,
I feel your pain. My vocal performance major,
right.
it all it ever did was get me interviews.
Yeah, it's like, do you know what kind of degree I have?
Now I do video production and marketing for a living.
Yeah. Here you go. So, but I've always, ultimately, I just, have a great family. Thankful of always, they all love and know God. And so that's always been a big part of my life. And making people smile and laugh has always been a big part of my life. So that's kind of, it's pretty simple. I guess it's that whole, like the whole, was an old skit on SNL where Jim Carrey he was on the Joe Pesci show, but they played Jim Carrey played. Anyway, one of them played Jimmy Stewart, and then the other guy played Jim Carrey. It was like, I'm Jim Carrey. It was like, and he's just like, I'll do anything for a laugh, and that was kind of the whole, and I always go back to that because that's kind of maybe my fault and strength, I guess. I'll do anything for a laugh. My son will be like, you're embarrassing yourself. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm embarrassing you. It's like, I don't get embarrassed. It's like, stop it. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm like, nope, can't happen. But anyway, so I just love making people smile and laugh. And so I've kind of, in the last, 4 or 5 years or so, kind of gotten involved online. I've always loved Star Wars and nerdy stuff as well. So I just it kind of happened, not by plan, not this great plan, this whiteboard, career criminal whiteboard of my online plan of humor. I've got ADHD, EFG anyway, so I don't make a plan. I jump in. So it just kind of, one thing led to another. I'm like, hey, I kind of like, this is a place where I can combine music, comedy, Star Wars, meeting people, making people laugh. And so that's I guess that's probably it. I want to enjoy life and want to help other people enjoy it too.
Very cool. Now I know you do a lot of comedy, Star Wars based sketches on your YouTube channel.
Yes.
Where do you come up with some of your ideas there?
Somewhere around here, right behind the brain vein. That whenever I'm playing one of my angry Star Wars fan characters, it tends to bulge a little more. But I don't know. I think I grew up watching lots of episodes of SNL. I was always a big fan of SNL, SCTV. Then later, then like Dick Van Dyke, Steve Martin, like kind of the physical comedy people, and Jim Carrey later on. So I've just always, I think, just combining all that craziness and have just always I don't know. It just comes to me, and I think, oh, this is funny, but this is kind of what other people may do. So I'll take an idea and then say, what would be the not expected result of this? Try to make it funny because it's not what you expected. So I guess that's probably how comedy works anyway. But I don't
Now,
know. I'm probably a little crazy. So
now I know you do a lot of comedy and you make fun
yeah,
of, Star Wars, and
yeah,
you make fun of angry Star Wars fans
yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But you kind of take Star Wars seriously a little bit, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's yeah, it's pretty bad. I guess I'm not one of these crazy collectors where you're like, okay, that person has a problem. But it's like my office. My daughter, she's 6, but she has some friends in the neighborhood or whatever. If they when they first come over and they see the office slash playroom, and she's like, "You can't touch that stuff. That's my daddy's office." They're like, "That's not an office. What are you talking about? It's a bunch of toys." Like that's and so it's there's Star Wars everywhere. My daughter knows way more than my wife about it. She's 6, and she'll school her on stuff. And so yeah, I'm pretty into it. I read all the books, and I mean, I try to read all of it, but I have not caught up on all of it. But yeah, I really like Star Wars.
Very, very nice.
Right.
And you and I actually came together because of a Star Wars podcast that we both
Yes.
really enjoy. Tatooine Sons,
Yeah.
David, Jesse, and Nate and Sam,
Yeah.
who I think have all been on this show at some point.
Awesome.
But so if you're not familiar with that podcast, people that are listening or watching right now, go check that out. Tatooine
Yes.
Sons, SON, with an O.
Yeah.
But
They are
great
awesome. Oh
podcast,
man, great. Yes, sir.
great guys. So Cam, I wanted to invite you on the show, and one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mandalorian
Yeah.
and where things are going. And there are some interesting things happening in the Mandalorian, in the Din Djarin's life right now, and Bo-Katan's life right now,
Yes.
and some of it kind of revolves around a type of faith. I won't say it's a Christian faith, but definitely the Mandalorian is examining some ideas about um, uh, religious ideas, and uh, some things that are, where they are holding on to traditions and seeing where things are going. So I think it's a pretty interesting show in general. I think this season is probably more interesting to me than the last two have been. What have you seen in the Mandalorian? What did you like about the Mandalorian?
Um, in general or this season in particular?
Let's start with in general. What have you thought about the Mandalorian overall? Is this something? Is this like your top Star Wars thing right now, or is this kind of the best thing they have done lately, or where you
Gotcha.
fall into that?
I love it, and I think maybe part of it it's kind of like that old friend, or like that when it came back on is just like one of those things where my alarm is set for 2 a.m. I'm on Central Time, and it's Mandalorian. It's it was still saved in there from and I started doing that when the first season came out, just because at that point this is the first Star Wars show we're getting, like, live action. It's streaming. It's like every week. This is awesome, and so it kind of, whether I've liked the other shows as well. I really enjoyed Andor, but for different
Hmm.
reasons. It's obviously grittier, a little more adult.
Right.
Um, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the animated series. I wasn't a huge fan of the Bad Batch at first, when they were introduced, and then they made a
Mm.
series on it. But it's that one's grown on me as well. But back to the Mandalorian, I think just because it was the first, it's kind of one of those things where I think I'm always going to be probably most excited about that. But when it first started, I didn't know what to expect. Wasn't a huge fan of the music at first, because I'm a huge John Williams fan, and I feel like, not that it has to be John Williams or someone copying John Williams, but for some reason I still kind of believe this even now, even with, it felt kind of the same way in Andor. Just, I feel like Star Wars probably, I would prefer it to have more of an orchestral, classic,
Mm.
timeless sound. I understand many people don't agree with that, or they're like, we got to get with the times, this and that. But even when Star Wars came out, that wasn't with the times. That music was already done with. I think but it gives it that timelessness. Um, but it's fine. The music has grown on me with the Mandalorian. It's not really something that I'm like, oh, I love the music, but the story wise, I love it.
It's
I'm sorry.
interesting that you mentioned the music. Since we're both musicians, I did think the music was a little different. Well, it's significantly different, as
Right.
you said.
Mhm.
Um, and I like it, but I'm a little on your side of I prefer that big orchestral,
Mhm.
majestic sound. But I do think they, from the get-go with the Mandalorian, they were going for a Western in space feel.
Mhm.
And I do think the music lends itself that way.
Right, because they literally, like George Lucas, I mean, he was like, "Oh, it's kind of like a space western," but he didn't take that literally with the western theme, the music wise, at least,
Yeah, not the
or at
music
least John
wise,
Williams didn't, I guess. Look, but
but I
yeah,
think
so
they are here.
they're taking it a little more literal, like, but there's a lot of the holster even this season, the hand over the holster and the back and forth, and they're really really like diving into it a little more. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is if Star Wars was a Kurosawa film, a
Mhm.
samurai movie in space, The
Right.
Mandalorian is a American spaghetti western in
Yep,
space.
totally. And I'm sure, like everyone, when Grogu, that first episode, Baby Yoda, whatever you want to call him, it's all the same. Um, oh my gosh, I still remember, like, it was chills when you realize, wait, that's a little Yoda character, like that's one of his species, and the little finger, like, oh my gosh, I was sold from that point on. So it's like they knew what they were doing, or they didn't, but they were hoping they knew what they were doing, because that was great. But thematically, I love where it's heading, and I'm sure we'll talk about this season. But yeah, I'm like, I wanted to write it down. I haven't written it down yet, but just the religious themes, the it's like you said, it's not like, oh, this is Christian theme, or this is, like Lucas went with the whole, like, just the wide,
Oh yeah.
the generic spiritual, but there are some things happening that I thought are really cool, both with Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, that I mean, and I always think that way anyway. Like, oh, this could be a great sermon illustration, or this would be an awesome way to relate scripture to Star Wars. So
Absolutely. And I definitely think we're headed to something. I'm just not sure what it is.
yeah.
Um, and in my brain, I have a couple of different ways. So let's kind of dive in. We've
Okay.
had 2 episodes now
Mhm.
of The Mandalorian, and actually, by the time this episode releases, we might have a third one out. But we've had a couple of episodes, and what have you thought about this season? Does it feel different than the last 2 seasons? What are your thoughts on this latest couple episodes?
Yeah, it does feel a little different. I don't know if it's they found their footing, um, or it was kind of a little longer before they got to this episode or this season. So maybe just the space in between, time to think or whatnot. I know they've had some personnel changes due to different political and beliefs and statements and things like that. So I'm sure there's been some rewriting or some readjusting, and
Mm.
I don't know, I don't pretend to know everything with Disney and Lucasfilm and all that goes on behind the scenes, but it doesn't seem like they quite have all that together either. Um, so I don't know how much of that plays into it. I know that Favreau, he has a story he's telling, but he's also recently said he doesn't know when it's going to end. So he's kind of like just kind of open ended, like he's just kind of telling the story, and we'll see where it goes, And so um, it feels a little different. I think maybe we're the I don't want to say the Filoni side of it, but I feel like it's becoming a little more ramped up to like tying into your Clone Wars and Rebels
Mhm.
cartoony, kind of not cartoony, but relating back to the animated series, and
Right.
they've got Ahsoka coming out. So I'm sure they have some ideas they're setting us up maybe with some themes that, if not in Mandalorian, they're going to explore elsewhere. But they're definitely just the spiritual theme with the whole kind of almost like the baptism kind of concept. But anyway, we get into that. But it's just I think it's cool coming from both perspectives, because there's kind of almost a flip on both of them. Or I tend to try to argue the Christian perspective on anything, and I can kind of see it from both of their characters' points of views. So I don't know.
Well, let's dive into that idea just a little bit. So we have these two characters that are steeped in their own personal belief systems, which are kind of antagonistic against each other a little bit. So we have this one situation. We have Bo-Katan, who feels like she deserves the leadership of the Mandalorian people, and deserves the dark saber. So, hopefully, those who are listening are up enough that they understand where we are in this whole thing. So it feels like she should have the dark saber, but is unwilling to simply accept it, because in tradition she should have to win it in battle.
Right.
And holding the dark saber is what gives you the right. But she also feels like she has the right by blood. So it's kind of a complicated set of situations for her. Where do you think that puts her in this whole scheme of things? With she's right now, she's not willing to go against her existing belief system. But at the same time, that's making it really difficult for her to continue to do the things she really feels like she should be doing.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a weird, interesting situation. I wonder how things are going to change next week, just kind of after the way some of the stuff ended. But yeah, so it's kind of that whole, she's holding on to it. Well, in one aspect, she she's like, you have to win it a certain way. It's like it's rightfully mine, but I'm going to do it the right way, because this is like, I guess this is the honorable. It's more like the honor, or this is the way it should be done. But then she's also telling, I almost look at it as like a denominational differences within the church.
Yes.
Because and out of the other side of her mouth, she's telling Din, you don't have to keep your helmet on. Those old, that's a cult that you're a part of. Those are like old, you don't have to do that to be a Mandalorian. Oh, but no, I can't take the saber because I have to win it rightfully in battle, or it's not mine because of some whatever her beliefs are in her denomination. It's like maybe the two different moons that they're from had slightly different views, or it's very interesting. But then she also said, like, her people, they left her because she doesn't have the dark saber, but she's still standing up for her beliefs that, like, well, they left me. I'm upset. She's basically just sitting on her throne,
Yes,
sobbing all day, or to poor me, pity party. But then she's not willing to, do what it takes to get it back, or to fight for it either. So kind of,
I'm seeing the same thing. We have this dichotomy of, we have two people with two different beliefs. We have Din, who has the dark saber and doesn't want leadership and is willing to give it up.
Yep.
We have Bo, who won't accept it freely. Then we have Din, who is ousted from his group of people that he feels like he's connected with, because he's removed his helmet and wants to go redeem himself to them. So it is an interesting thing where we have this situation where we have someone who wants leadership, but wants leadership and feels like they deserve it, but won't just accept it. And we've got somebody who doesn't want leadership, but technically has it, even though he doesn't want it and has no interest in it.
Yeah, but he's doing everything. I mean, he's going through, whatever it takes to to be forgiven and clear his name, and be walking the path, the path he thinks is, the right path for his beliefs. But But then one thing I thought was interesting, and I should have researched this, because I should know more about this, the mythosaur, because it's, and maybe you know this, and I'm just asking because I'm not sure. Like, do they think the mythosaur is not a real creature? But well, they have the skulls, right? So it is
Yeah,
a real,
I think it
it's
is
a
a real
it's a
thing.
real
Like,
creature. Okay, because she sees it, and then it seems like that just does something. Like, I don't know if she didn't truly believe. Maybe she thought that was just a, I don't know, but it seemed like that did something when they're coming up out of the water, and it's almost like they were both baptized, at the same time. She didn't realize that, I don't know. I can't
yeah,
really
I
figure
think
out their fake religion, whatever they're coming up with, but something
yeah,
like that.
I'm not sure where that falls for her.
Yeah.
I believe the belief was that they were extinct.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
if that in fact, if what we saw in the water in this recent episode is in fact a mythosaur, that would be a surprise to her
Yeah.
probably.
Okay. So
Um,
that's, yeah.
so
There we
so whether definitely extinct, and then there's a some story of somebody taming them and riding them.
go. Okay.
So that's another question of,
Yep.
did that really happen? Because she makes
Hmm.
some comment of, oh, it's cute that you
Right.
believe
Right.
those
That's
stories.
cute. Yeah. She's like, let me give you the full tour. She reads the inscription, like, oh my gosh, whatever this. Yeah. And then I don't know. Was that mythosaur alive under the water, or was it just supposed to, I watched it a few times and I couldn't tell, but it was definitely a mythosaur, and its body was all intact, and it looked like it was, I couldn't tell if its eyes moved or if it was just
I
something
think
where,
it was, yeah, I think it was alive, and
okay, okay.
I'm interested to see. I mean, so they were supposedly tamed and could be ridden.
Okay.
So because of the book of Boba Fett,
Right. We're going to have
I have this.
the Rancor mythosaur scene
Yes, yes.
jumping over the,
I'm imagining sometime in the near future that that one of the Mandalorians will come triumphantly riding in on a mythosaur before this season is
it
over.
better be Baby Yoda, is all I'm saying. Because that would be the cutest thing. You're like, well, it's a mythosaur, but who's driving it? And he's like, and then whatever. He's throwing people around with his little force hands. And so it is interesting to me this is a side tangent, but like, he's able to just throw that beast, I forget what they called them, the ants, not ant, forget. Anyway, the caveman looking crazy,
Yes,
but he can just throw them around, but then has trouble other times. So I'm not sure how that works. Maybe it's an adrenaline thing, like he's, you know.
I've wondered that. I wondered that same thing. One of my friends made a comment that this was when we were just had the trailer. We hadn't actually
Mhm.
seen the episode yet. They said it was interesting because he just tossed him aside like it was no big deal,
Mhm.
and he didn't get tired afterwards.
Yep. Hmm.
So that's
Oh,
a
because
new
he
thing.
goes on a journey afterwards and gets
Yeah.
help and comes back, and
Yes. And even when he's like in the first episode, when he's sitting there and he's spinning his chair,
yep.
he's at will using the force
Hmm.
and not getting exhausted and tired like he did in the last season.
Right. Hmm.
So I think there's definitely some growth there.
Yeah.
That will be interesting to see how much the force comes into play in our Grogu's life.
Right. Right. Yep.
I've made a joke previously because there is in the Mandalorian mythos, there's a story about the first Jedi Mandalorian.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, so if that's a thing, we could just bring this all to a head by having Baby Yoda pick up the dark saber and become the leader
Oh,
of the
I like that.
become the leader of the Mandalorians.
Yep. Yep.
It would be super cute, but I don't think we're going to see it happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. the thing is that where they're at, we have you know, we know some of where it's heading, you know, so it's kind of limited on, you know, how long they can last or what. At least as far as we know, who knows? They can always figure out some way. But
So let me ask you a few questions here.
yeah,
A little more rapid fire, but
sure.
answer as long or as short as you want. So, with this issue of Bo Katan not wanting to take the dark saber, do you think she and Din Djarin will have some sort of battle at some point, or do you think it's going to come down to someone taking the saber from him and her defeating some other enemy that we haven't seen yet? Or do you think this is going to be a point where she finally accepts that she can simply accept the dark saber from him? Where do you think we're going to go here?
Well, here's just my mind. This is what I'm thinking. We know Moff Gideon is in this season because
Yes.
Giancarlo Esposito said he's in it, and it sounds like he's done even more like physical fighting type stuff. And they've already alluded that he's off wherever, so he's got to escape and everything in the next 6 episodes and show up. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a revisit of the last time when Din got the dark saber, but maybe he takes it back from him and he's part of the fight. But what I would like to see is maybe Din and kind of what you were saying as well, Bo, they kind of maybe trade on, like they're both using it. They're, you know, here they're throwing it back and forth, using it against him, take it from him. He, you know, or something where they realize, you know, they're just all working together and it becomes maybe not quite as you know, it has to be this way. Or maybe Din, you know, he decides to, or I don't know, or it could just be where Moff Gideon gets it from him and then Bo kind of steps in and right without even wanting to or intentionally, she wins it from him because she defeats him, Moff Gideon. Maybe I don't think her and Din are going to fight, but I think it's going to be Moff Gideon or someone else. But I just feel like he already had it and he wants it. He's felt that power, and you know, and so he's going to be back. So I think it'll be one of those teamwork things. And then in the midst of all of it, that's when Baby Yoda comes off on the mythosaur and does something. You know, the big two episode finale that I can't pronounce his last name. Rick Famajua. I'm not going to try to say it. Anyway, he's directing the last 2 episodes, the same guy who directed the first episode. So that's my picture, just the big battle. And
I could absolutely see that. I think one of my things here is there's this idea that I have running through my head. You know, we have Din who is trying to redeem himself and, you know, so it doesn't matter that he removed his helmet, and then he'll never have to remove his helmet again.
Yeah.
That's the idea here. Then we've got Bo who won't take the saber, has to win the saber in battle, blah blah blah. So here's one of my thoughts. I think they both either have to fulfill their the need for these ancient practices, or they both have to decide these ancient practices don't matter. I don't think we can have one of them fulfill them and one of them turn away from them.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Is this an either or thing, or can we split the baby, so to speak?
No, I think you're right. And as you were saying that, I'm just picturing, you know, and I'm just like writing my vision of the final episodes. But maybe I mean, it could be something as simple as something happens and then his helmet falls off, you know, in battle, and then it's like this moment, you know, and then there's maybe both of them. There's this realization. It's like we can still stand up for what we're fighting for. We can still. You know, be Mandalorians. Like it's what, you know, it's that whole, it's what's inside that counts. You know, it's like, like you've got all the doctrine and all the different, no, we sprinkle baptize. No, you got to be dunked. You got to, you know, I've got views on that, but like more things like, I guess that wasn't a good example, but but you know what I mean. But even
Yeah.
that, it's like it's the heart. It's ultimately, it's like we have all these man-made rituals and ways you're supposed to do things and this and that, or you should do this, or no, this is pre whatever doctrines they're talking about. But at the end of the day, they're all referring to their people, the Mandalorians. So
Mhm.
like they're still Mandalorians. And so, but it's just annoying that they don't realize that completely. But we wouldn't have a story, I guess, if they just you're like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I feel like this is more of a should we use old hymns or new songs in the church
There you
kind of
go. That's a good
situation.
example. Yes. Yes. Sure. All of the above. Or not. That's okay as well. So, yeah.
But I do think it is going to come down to, and I don't know who has made the decision, but I'm sure someone has made the decision in the story group that they're either both going to fulfill their old ways or they're both going to step away from their old ways, and
Definitely.
that is going to be that's how I feel like it needs to happen.
It
But
has
I'm
to, and they've yeah, sorry.
just not sure how.
Yeah. No, I agree because I mean, they're definitely moving in that direction. They've alluded to it for all 3 seasons, and now it's like it seems like that's a big focus now. It's like now we know Mandalore is available, and it, they can, it's not poisoned or whatever. They're both kind of learning different lessons along the way, I think, and it's going to be one of those things. I think they help each other out to realize that. So, but yeah.
Now, I know you are active on Twitter and
Mhm.
active on the internet in general. Have you seen the inscription on the green stone?
I did, and someone said it was what Exodus. I actually looked it up and read the
It's I'm pretty sure I didn't go back and read the actual. I read what was posted. I didn't go back and read the whole scripture set, but I'm pretty sure it's the plague of flies.
it's the locusts. Yep.
Locusts. Okay,
But it's only
locusts.
the part after he says what it is, and it's just
Yeah,
basically saying
it's
yeah,
just the results.
right.
But
This is what's going to happen if you don't. Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was interesting that somebody
Mhm.
took the time to do that.
Yeah. I
Um,
couldn't tell from the picture. I was like, I can't. How do you even read that? But
I was gonna say somebody had to enhance that image in order
right,
to see that, but I haven't seen it disproven, and I've
right.
seen it
Same.
mentioned. Like Screen Rant is okay with it, saying
Hmm.
it's accurate. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I generally, it's not coming from bounding into comics
Yeah. Right.
or
Yeah. Now
or
this
or
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 whatever.
or big freaking robot. So
Okay. Yeah.
I in general I'm going to go that this probably is accurate because I haven't researched it in depth. But I
Hmm.
think it's interesting that someone took the time to pull out scripture from the Old Testament
Hmm.
and put it on this stone for some reason.
Right.
But I wonder if that is relevant or is just one of those. I have an opportunity here, so
Yeah.
I'm going to put my Christian faith into this
Sure.
movie by inscribing it on this stone, and I'm just not going to tell anybody I did it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they do everything so intentional that
Mhm.
it may. Obviously, they didn't want it to be something where it's like they talk about it in world because they wouldn't have
Right.
scripture in world. So they figure it's just a throwaway thing. But yeah, like you're saying, it wasn't just hey, I'm going to put this on there, but it seems way too specific and seems to maybe tie into kind of what they were talking about, at least as far as her thinking. Things being like a plague or it's like
Yeah.
thinking their world had been destroyed or whatever. But I don't know if there's much anything deeper than that. I don't know if it's like this big clue, but or
Yeah.
just thematic.
I don't think it will be a big clue.
Right, right.
Some people are saying that it might point to an idea, and this is a vague
Mhm.
idea, to compare the Jewish diaspora to the Mandalorians scattered through the universe. The
Okay.
scattered Jews to the scattered
Yeah.
Mandalorians. Which I was like, okay, I could see that,
Mhm.
it's a bit of a stretch, but it kind of
Right.
works in story. But I'm kind of with you. I don't know that it really means anything more than in just being interesting and causing people like us nerds to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I typically, and this could just be me, I typically tend to think, oh, anybody working on that, they're probably not a Christian to begin with, and so that's just my general take on. It's probably not true. I'm sure there are plenty of Christians working in that, on it, but you know, I wonder some, because a lot of times you'll see in movies they'll use scriptural references and all, and like almost like it's very intellectual how they're using it, but then it's kind of like it's not really used, not coming from a Christian perspective. They're just
That's
using
not
it.
really what that
Yeah,
word. It does not mean what you think. I do not
yeah,
think that
right,
word means what you think it means. Yeah,
right. They're
I'm
using it
right there
more
with
from
you.
just a strictly religious. Oh, it's a historical religious document that we're using because it makes it seem more
Yeah,
spiritual or whatever. I think
this
that's
sounds
probably
really
more of what it
good.
is. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool. Remember there are plagues, and because everybody knows that story. You don't have to be a
yeah,
Christian or a Jew, to know that. And so, but maybe not. But I think it's just a cool. They're like, we need to have it say something. Why don't we have it relate to something like that?
yeah. I think I'm right there with you on that. So, any other thoughts about where we're going with the Mandalorian this season?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I try not to do too much speculating. Um, I definitely don't put expectations on anything. I think that's a lot of people's problems. I think who get really upset online and all. It's like they want it to be this way or it's supposed to be this way. It's like you're not writing the story. It's not your story. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
So I'm along for the ride on all of this. I just love Star Wars, so I'm like, obviously some things I like better than others just because of I'm my own person but um, I try not to think too hard into it, but I mean, it definitely seems like we're leading to a battle of some sort. I know in the
hmm
previews, there's like Navarro is going to be basically left in ruins, and it looked like a lot of Mandalorians were part of that. So I
hmm
don't know what would cause that because it seems like they have a really nice, like he's kind of turned the city around. Like they've got schools and families
yeah,
and and, and people are just like selling goods and so
yeah.
that
I
kind of
have
makes
some
me worried.
speculations there, but I'm not sure about
Yeah,
them.
I don't know. I know we're leading up to a big 2 episode battle of some sort, but maybe the next couple episodes kind of get to the midpoint will kind of show us. Like I think right now we've just explored like where Din and Bo are kind of in they're kind of I think they're starting to have a change, change
hmm
of belief or at least setting the path for that to happen. Once they maybe Din sees the way his that group that he was with acts in a certain scenario and he doesn't agree with it, or I don't know. I don't have anything revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think there's too many directions it could go at this point.
Mhm.
I think it's too early to know for sure. I am really interested to see how all this pans out. Um, but I feel like there's going to be probably some major separation um, between Din and the group that he has always associated himself
Yep.
with
Yeah.
before the end of this one, in one way,
I
shape,
agree.
or form.
Yeah,
Just not sure how.
I agree. I agree.
Well, Cam, it has been great having you on the show. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, between about 7:30 p.m. and 5 a.m. I'm just sleeping. And so I'm old and I need my rest. So just please don't come looking for me at that point. But online, you can find me. I'm on YouTube, Cam Ray Semi Productions. I'm on Twitter, just at Cam Ray. Instagram at Cam Ray, and Facebook at Cam Ray Semi Productions. And I've also started doing TikTok. I went on and off with that, and I finally got the algorithm where it's like I kind of weeded out a bunch of the garbage. And so it's kind of now
Yes.
it's still more of a hit and run operation. I jump on there, put a really stupid, crazy video on there, and I leave. But you can find me on TikTok at Cam Ray Semi Productions. And I just make some music comedy, parody, satire, mostly Star Wars related, but I try to branch out and do different things that are just, and it's all family friendly too. I want to put that out there. So
awesome. Well, I'll put links to all of your stuff down in the show notes down below. Cam, it's been
awesome.
great having you on the show today.
Thanks, Ricky. I really appreciate the invite, and I loved it.
It was great getting to know Cam. Make sure you check out the links down in the show notes below, and definitely give Cam a follow. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, click all those links down below, and so you can keep up with us as we put out new content and release it. You'll want to find our social links and links to our YouTube channel and to our online store at christiannerdsunite.com. And if you enjoy the show and want to help even more, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. We've changed all of our Patreon levels recently, and every level has great benefits and makes a huge difference in the ministries we're able to support. Supporters will also get to hear exclusive stories of believers we're serving around the world through our ministry partners. To check it out, go to patreon.com/Christian Nerds Unite or ChristianNerdsUnite.com and click on support in the menu. Before you go, I do want to leave you with this blessing. John 14:27, the words of Jesus. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. We'll see you next week. Blessings.